Hi, I am here with the filmmakers of the two short films that were just shown, The Ferryman. And from The Ferryman, I have Emma Fraser, who's the director. Just raise your hand so people know who you are. And Eve Charlton, who played the young woman in the movie, fabulously, I might add. And from On Island West, I have Carolyn Saunders, who is the director and writer of that short film. Fabulous films, both of them. I loved the water aspect in both of them, if that makes sense, because The Ferryman only has it for a little bit, but Ferryman on the water, and yours was water as well. And I liked the duality in both of these shorts that had, because water can be cleansing and baptismal, and it can also be, you know, killing and violent. Like water is just great. For its many aspects, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm going to start with The Ferryman. And Emma, I wanted to ask you a question about the quote at the beginning. So the quote says, "Of what significance are the things you can forget?" Was that a quote that inspired how you filmed the movie, or was it a quote that came after you had sort of decided the arc and the flow of your movie?
Yeah, it was a quote that came afterwards. So we were trying to sort of find a way to reference what happens in the film, but do, like, you know, be quite elusive with it, so it was still kind of open to interpretation. But yeah, we thought it was a suitable little sort of nod to what happens within the film. Yeah.
And what importance did the chess game play? Like what was your vision for showing that? What did you want the audience to take away from the chess pieces?
I think the chess pieces just sort of represent what happens in the storyline, really. So you can sort of see each scene as sort of a piece being played. You know, the Ferryman is quite a mysterious character, and yeah, it's sort of each piece that it is moved is another sort of trick he is trying to play. But obviously at the end, the king falls, and that is sort of what happens to the male character in the film.
Yeah, and that's also alluded to in the newspaper that he finds, right? It says
Right.
The king's fallen. Okay. And Eve, what was the most challenging aspect of portraying a character that doesn't say anything?
I think just trying to get across somebody that we don't get to know anything about, really. Trying to sort of engage with an audience when they don't really have much to relate to about me. So I just tried to kind of internalize, how would I feel if I woke up and I had no idea where I was.
Well, it came across very clearly. I was engaged with you from the beginning, and I was engaged with the film from the beginning. Just the visual aspect of it, with the colors and the just having a narrative on top of it was actually very poignant for me, because none of the characters spoke, and I really liked that aspect of it. Carolyn, let me ask you, water. What brought that aspect of your film to the forefront?
Sorry, do you mean why was it an island? Why did I choose it? Well, I wanted to, sorry, I'm getting over COVID right now, so
yay, COVID.
I know. I wanted to create a space where this girl could grow up so isolated that she could grow up in this cult-like, very racist society and never have had exposure to the outside world, which is why I chose sci-fi. And in England, where I live, there's like not a lot of places that are that isolated. So another reason I chose sci-fi. So I chose to make her completely separated. I created an island that was created by climate change flooding.
Okay.
And the idea with the water was that, and the island itself is that, you know, for the people of the island, it's the island is utopian to them, right? So the water protects them from migrants, which they see as evil. But it also keeps her prisoner. So
and she was born. So if I get this right, and correct me if I'm wrong, she was born after the plague that had come, right? So she didn't know any of that world. So this world is all, so she's been isolated from that past while she's isolated on an island from the outside world. And you have her set up as that's her, like not a martyr, but she's set up as the person who is the face of this new movement, right?
she is the face of the cause, as they say. And she came from, I watched a documentary about, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, about these two little 11-year-old girls, twin white supremacist girls in America who sing horrible racist songs on the white supremacist festival circuit, for lack of a better term. And there were a couple of docs done about them, but they were just like these little blonde angels, right? And just spouting this absolute bile. And then the filmmaker went home with them, and you could see why they were the way they were, because their mother was a monster. And I was always I just wanted to tell not their story, but the story of, because I wondered what happens to people who grew up with not knowing any other way. Are they condemned to be that way? How do they get away? Like we all know the story of the girl who got away from the Westboro Baptist Church, right? Or maybe we don't all, but you guys should look it up if you don't. So I wanted to explore that, and I wrote this film to explore that. So she, like them, has grown up completely isolated.
You did a really good job with it, and I liked the visual aspects of like just the little tent in that cove area. So it drew a dotted line to things that we're familiar with without having it be in my face told to me. And I liked that aspect of your film. You did that very well.
Thank you.
Now, Emma, I did want to ask you, in your film, there are a number of different words that the narrator says. He says fate and luck and chance. And then a little bit later on, he says greed and exploiting and tricking, and all of those things, those two separate camps have consequences in my mind. How did that duality play into your film?
I think the film sort of comments on the the aspects of greed and stuff, and he says in the film what you were saying there about it will have consequences and stuff. But I mean, I'm not sure really the duality of it.
Let's see.
Because fate and luck and chance are different from greed and exploiting and teaching. Like fate, luck, and chance, you don't actively act on, right? But greed and exploiting, you do. So maybe there was no duality in your mind with it. I just thought that those two segments of words were in contrast to each other in a good way, because they each have consequences on whether you follow them through or what you do with them. And I just wondered if there was any play in it. I think you can say no if there isn't.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you bring it up, really, because I don't think we really thought about it that much, but there was definitely a duality between the characters. We tried to portray quite polar opposites, really, between them, but yeah, it's a good point, really. Yeah.
Was there any significance, or what was your significance with his dirty hands?
So the dirty hands, we sort of took, so the character is a banker, or you can sort of figure that out a little bit through the newspaper and stuff. And the dirty hands sort of represented him sort of handling dirty money, and sort of a nod to corruption and that sort of side of things. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Excuse me. So Carolyn, what was, there were two young males in your film, and one was the militant for the cause, correct?
Yeah.
And then the other one was kind of the rebel. He came, and your lead female, the young girl, was kind of torn between the two of them. Excuse me. One second. Did you do that purposefully to show the struggle between what people were perceiving as evil and what was actually evil on the island? Or what was the two characters, their bipolar posts for that?
Well, this short is a proof of concept for a feature. So, oh, hang on. That was my dad.
Oh, hi, Dad.
It was a proof of concept for a feature, and in the feature, and I hope in the short, the militia guy, Will, who has no name in the short, he like Arya, he grew up on the island, and this is all he knows, and so he is all in, and he wants her. She's not interested. She's interested in, she's curious about what's across the sea. And the other guy, who is indigenous, but she doesn't know it at first, he comes from across the sea, and she's never seen an indigenous person. He's Métis. She doesn't know what that means, none of it. And so she is, because of her lack of knowledge, and he's white passing, she is free to fall for him until she finds out, right? And so really the duality is where she has to struggle with who she thought he was, and then who he actually turns out to be, and what's she going to do about that? Yeah, if that makes sense.
No, that totally made sense. What I saw with her character, and it was just a fleeting image that went through my brain, was in The Sound of Music, which is a film that I love, right? That it reminded me of the girl who fell for the young, the guy eventually becomes the thing that she doesn't like, right? And so when I saw the innocence of your character with the militia guy who was, finding his bravado and pomp, and then she found kind of like this innocence and curiosity with the guy who had come across the water. I liked how those two contrasts played, and your actor played the confusion and kind of the struggle very well. Did you guide her in that?
I did, yeah. And she is also very familiar with the character because she's read the feature, but the character is very committed to the island and everything the island stands for. And she is the face of the cause. So the younger guy, Will, does represent the cause also. So you're right in that she's not drawn to him. She doesn't like him as a human being, but she feels that she's bound to him in a certain way, regardless.
Yeah, just from familiarity even.
Well, just because they're on the same side.
Yeah, and it's who she's grown up with for her life, right? So it's what she knows, and I like that. I hope it gets made into a feature, because I'd like to see these characters grow more and see their story told more fulsomely. That would be great. So Eve, what did the ferryman represent to you in this movie when you were figuring out your character? Did you draw on that specifically, or did you just, I know you said you just tried to figure out what it would feel like to wake up alone and not know where you were, but did the concept of the ferryman play into, I guess, your character development, or how you felt you wanted to portray? And Emma, you can answer that as well as the director, what that aspect of the film played, because we all know what the ferryman is. So
so I, obviously waking up and not knowing who the ferryman is at first, I was kind of drawn, which is shown very well with the sound design. I was sort of drawn towards this figure, and it's like I kind of knew that I needed to get there, but I wasn't quite sure what I needed to do or why or who he was until I kind of completed that journey, and then it's all kind of like revealed who he is. So it was more of a kind of, I would say I saw the Ferryman as more as of like a spiritual figure, more as something that you don't consciously notice. But he's always there drawing me back towards him.
Pulling you along, but you don't really know why.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
suppose the film it does sort of represent what I think maybe what we sort of subconsciously understand or think that we understand about sort of the afterlife, because that is what the location is. It's sort of they're in a limbo after they've passed. And I think, in the narration, we talk a lot about consequences of, our actions here and things like that. So, yeah, I think maybe it did represent our ideas of sort of what the afterlife may be. Yeah.
And what is the one thing that you would like audiences to take away from your film, The Ferryman?
I think the narration says it best, really. That our actions do have consequences, whether it's here or maybe after here. Here being Earth, this where we are now. But yeah, just to be conscious of the decisions that we make and treat people with kindness. Yeah.
I like that message. I'm hoping that a lot of people will grab onto that.
Yeah.
And so then one last question for the two of you, and then Carolyn, I'm gonna get over to you. What is this your concept before you did the film? Is this a concept that you had already of an afterlife, of purgatory, almost, of a waiting area before you're shuttled off? Did you already believe in those things, or is this a film that's exploring the possibilities that might exist?
I think a little bit of both, actually. We took quite a lot of inspiration from, sort of Greek mythology type, the river Styx and that sort of aspect of things. So I think maybe, I think maybe a little bit of both. What we already sort of had in our heads, but we expanded our knowledge on those ideas in mythology. Yeah, so I think it's a mixture.
If you think back, remember to the very first sketch of an idea we actually had. It was actually going to be filmed at a bus stop. Yeah. So a physical waiting area. So it wasn't, we kind of got onto the afterlife shortly after that. But at first it was just a physical waiting area. We hadn't thought about like the spiritual aspect of it until later on.
Oh, well, it evolved very nicely. Both would have worked, I think. So Carolyn, with the isolation on the island, and did COVID play into that concept at all, or did you already have this idea for this isolating area? Or I'm just curious about that.
It's funny that you would say that, because I wrote it. I wrote the feature first. COVID was not a part of it. Climate change was, and xenophobia was. I was shooting the short in March of 2020 down in Cornwall, and in the middle of shooting, I got a call from my exec producer saying, "Come home," and I said, "No." And I said to my crew, apparently London's gone into lockdown. What do you guys want to do? And I said, we can stop now. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable, but honestly, we were extremely isolated, as you could see. We were all staying in one beautiful big farmhouse together, and everyone just said, why would we want to go back to London? Like, we feel safe here. And so we kept shooting. So COVID literally happened while we were shooting. And so I decided, well, this is going to be big. COVID's going to be big. And I thought I have to find ways to just work it in. So that's why there's the little bit of that script at the beginning, because it wasn't in the original script. And we played with it a little bit in post-production. And I wrote it later into the feature, so that the COVID is part of the lie that they use to control people. They gaslight people with to keep them on the island. So yeah, it plays a big part from starting out with nothing.
It did have that subtle feel to it, so that's why I wanted to ask that question. Well, ladies, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. I enjoyed both of your shorts immensely. I thought they were poignant, and they impacted me as a lot. The creativity behind these is just phenomenal, and I wish you the best with your future endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you.